Boy, it doesn't seem that long ago when we didn't even have this paint job laid out, and here we are, closing in on the end of this project. And it seems like it was only yesterday that we were laying out the trim, laying out the decals, and here we are trying to get some decent days to spray clear and whatnot. But we do have to wait for the decals. John said they'd be here in about 3 more days. Well, given our postal situation, that might be 2 weeks, who knows. Now, the part that I was experimenting with yesterday, 24 hours, it sanded out okay, but it certainly was a lot more work than when the paint is older. And I had it up by the heating vent. I wet sanded 1500 sandpaper, 1200. And yeah, it sanded out, but boy, it's not like when the paint was the older paint on the fender and the other pieces. And the fender just sanded out like butter, absolute butter. So the conclusion I drew from that was we're going to let our clear dry a little longer than we normally do, just to make the sand out less labor intensive. When we do the bigger parts, and especially the tank and the fairing that are going to take days, it's just not appropriate. We're not in any rush anyway. And I certainly got to see firsthand how you can make yourself a lot more work by rushing a paint job. When you rush it, now I put this up by the heating vent last night thinking that may help it out. I'm going to sand this. I'm going to take another little part and sand this. This will be after 48 hours. And then I'm going to let it sit for a couple more days because I want to see at what point in time does it get relatively easier to sand. See, this is unique shop conditions we have here. We paint when it's very cold. It's always humid. In fact, it's pouring rain out there right now. And we're always trying to sequence things so we get in the short amount of time we get the most done. And every time I look at my concept sketches that I wonder how close this is going to be when it's all assembled. But so far, to be honest, I'm really happy the way this is coming out. And this supposed to basically rain all day today. Nothing unusual about that. And because it's going to rain all day, sequencing my work is an important part of everything. Now I've got Steve's stuff hanging up out here. It's drying up beautifully. And I'm trying to figure out exactly what things would be the most productive to do today. This stuff really did dry up nice. Steve, again, he's in Texas or he's in Mexico or somewhere. Who the hell knows? I think he's going to be pretty happy with that. And I don't know. See, the only thing I'm not happy with is the way these decals look. But again, that's not an easy fix, but it's fixable in a lot of ways. I'll have to see when he actually looks at it. I'm not unhappy. When you think about how we started this job, and it looked like a fisheye nightmare, a Bondo nightmare. A lot of things had to be fixed with CA. Awful lot of body work on this. Cleanups, resand outs, extra coats of prime, but now you see the result. Now, the last time I had a crappy day like this, I spent a good amount of time on this side of the frame polishing. That was probably some good information to pass on. And what I'll probably do somewhere in the near future, or maybe even today, get this side polished and then that'll be in the bank. But see, this is the whole thing with sequencing. I'm trying to use up a really crappy day and get something done. And what is really important here, I don't want to waste the day, because if I can get things prepped up that I'm ready to paint, it's that sequencing thing is so important. It's important to me, not to everybody, because if you have unlimited time, unlimited money, then it's not important at all. Or you just go buy a new bike. That's an easier way to do it. But here's the thing that I always like to think. I have a limited amount of time, certainly a limited amount of money, and a limited, at this point in my life, a limited amount of energy. So using everything efficiently is always the #1 priority. And I never want to waste a day. I never want to just have a day go by that I just say, oh, well, you know, I sat in a lazy boy all day today. Didn't get anything done. I always like to get something done. So my boss has advised me that today is our shopping day. One of the days I look forward to because I like to go pick out food for goodies for myself. But when I get back this afternoon, I should have a time window, 3 or 4 hours, and I'll be free to play. But the problem is it's probably still going to be raining. And I guess if you got nothing else out of watching this, the adventure of the FZR, if you could improve your sequencing and get a lot more things done in a short amount of time for less money, then I guess it was worth watching the videos. Or if the thing you get out of it is just be patient, this stuff takes time. And when you rush it, it's a lot less fun. And boy, it is. This is not the best day of the year. Steve, I'm so glad I got your stuff done on that one really nice day we had. Boy, that had to be, that I had to mark the calendar. Steve's lucky day. So the same as yesterday, what we're going to do for this part of the test, and again, this may be a little redundant, but it's confirming what I originally suspected. And it's information, it's good information we can share. Okay, so the test for this is, and it's very simple, but it's critical. It's a simple thing, but if it's right or wrong, you can basically make yourself 10 times the work if you go to sand or buff paint out and it's not totally dry. Now, the debate is always among painters, and I've heard it every way you can hear it, that you have to wait a certain amount of time. Some people say 24 hours, 48, 72, a month, a year, whatever. I figured I'd figure it out myself. And that's kind of the way I like to do everything anyway. So what I did this yesterday, and what was happening, the sandpaper was dragging like, it definitely was not ready to be sanded. This side has never been sanded, so I thought the first thing, 1200 sandpaper, which is what you would normally use for this step in the procedure. And I can tell, which I suspected, because I had this up by a heating vent, I suspected this might be a lot easier to sand, and I was right. But see, it's a whole different thing to think you know the answer from really being able to prove the answer. It's like if you're a scientist and you say, well, I believe in a certain thing that, dinosaurs went extinct by, by smoking cigarettes or something, and then I can prove it. I see the empty cigarette packs. So what I'm doing here, and this is really just confirming my suspicion, and I am a suspicious person, and I do like to do all the tests myself, because anything regarding paint is like cooking. There's no one rule. You gotta taste it, check it, add a little oregano or something. And now, if I look at this right now, and I look at this, I want to show this up close. First off, you can see this side never even got real dull from the sanding, because what was happening, we were just pushing the paint over rather than cutting it. It was like just smoothing it over, even though this got smooth. This side, we're cutting the paint. So here's my first thought is, I'll sand the rest of this off camera for obvious reasons. You're going to be bored to death looking at this for another half an hour. But here was my first thought. The one thing to never do, at least if you're using 5-star clear, the one rule I've come across is put it out in a cold garage, 24 hours later, go to sand it. Yeah, and even worse, buff it. Because this will not take a buff, not take a final shine. This side probably will. But now this is 48 hours old. So by doing this test in the real world with a 48-hour-old part, and I had the 2-month-old parts from before, now I don't have a suspicion about how the dinosaurs died. I have the empty cigarette packs. So I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this or not, but in the final sand out, because I did it in fast forward to keep you from falling asleep, I went through on an edge, and it's almost always you go through on an edge, and there's a little edge up here. I don't know if you can see it, a little edge. The paint is a little thin, and around the top here. But now, rather than do that with a brush, it's a rainy day, and I can shoot this in the back room with the airbrush. That'll fill it, that'll make that go away in a matter of seconds. And I don't have to do any back masking. That's a little free bonus. Now, a couple of things. When I'm setting up an airbrush, this is just me. And with yellow, reds, actually with every color, you've got to always, just before you mix the paint, stir it. Anytime I've tried to skip that step or minimize it, it's a little whiter or different color, especially yellows and reds seem to be the worst. Or metallics. If you're not stirring the bottom of a Suzuki metallic, that blue metallic, when you spray it, it won't be the same color. But anyway, that's beside the point. This is pretty low tech now. I always have a mixing jar for this is for my airbrush, and I always make sure the paint is stirred. I mix 2 ounces at a time. This will now be an airbrush mix. It's 50-50, of course, and DR 733 thinner. This mixture always seems to work pretty well in an airbrush for me. And on a rainy day like this, to be able to paint in the back room is a big giant asset. In fact, there's probably some other touch-ups I ought to look at doing while I have the airbrush here, if there are any. Let's hope there aren't any. But the point I'm trying to make is you never, I can't anyway. I shouldn't say never. I can do this for 50 years and I still sand through corners and edges and whatever. Okay, so this comes out. This now is going to go in our IWATA airbrush. Let me just pour it in. Leave that there. I know that's an airbrush mix. Although if I was doing several of these jobs at once, what I'd figure out, I can cap this off. This is always some full strength paint. Never go to the bottom of the 9th at the last little bit. That's a big mistake. And there'll always be a scratch or something you got to touch up. And this is, of course, is an IWATA airbrush, and it really is. I have gotten, this is an expensive airbrush. I'm not used to dealing with expensive equipment, but this, I got this many years now. It has served me well. Now, I've said this before, this is an IWATA airbrush, but I did notice in Harbor Freight they have ones, I think they're $15 or something. And I always mark my little mix of paint. Let's hope I don't have any extra touch-ups, but if I do, I'll leave that in the gun for a day or so, but no longer than that. And so a few minutes later, instead of having a part with a couple of sand throughs and a couple edges that I wasn't happy with, now, this part got sanded 48 hours. I'm going to remember that. The minimum, I would say, the thing that I learned from this 2 days of testing, minimum before I sand paint, 2 days. And maybe now, if we were doing 2500, 2000 grit and then buffing, I'd want to wait even longer. But I'm convinced now, because I've done the test in my own shop environment, letting that dry a couple extra days really makes a difference. Now, I've been concerned about figuring out how to test this decal issue that Steve had on his the Kawasaki thing. It just looked foggy because I have not experienced that with any of the decal paper that I've used. Now, we're trying to share information, and I spoke to John at length. I bet we spoke 2 hours about it. And he's going to provide all the information for the decal paper that he's used in the past. We'll try to post that up on the, obviously, so we can share it. But he's been dealing with somebody in Texas that supposedly was very good. I have some of their old sample paper here. So And this is what I always suggest to other people. This, by the way, is just an ordinary piece of glass because I want to see both sides of the decal when I do my test. And you may be thinking, oh boy, overkill again. Well, you know, everything I do seems to be overkill, but I really want to know about these decals because I've used them many, many years in both model planes, other things where we put logos on things. They've worked perfectly. This is really an anomaly that we have this thing with Steve's gas tank. So I'm going to start. You can see I just put invisible glass. That is a perfectly clean sheet of glass. Now what I'm going to do is get a decal from every source we have and lay them all out and see if they're similar, the same, or not the same. So luckily for everybody, I organized all the decals a while back. We got the Kawasaki ones, we got the Yamaha ones. Here's what I'm interested in knowing. Now, Steve's decals should be in here. And these are other ones that actually, Steve actually made these. So there's no identifying thing on the back who made the paper on these. So who knows? The pride of Czechoslovakia or something. This one has something written on the back. Inkjet white, WW, oh, water slide decal paper. Doesn't tell you who made it. But anyway, I want to look for the ones that we had the problem with first. And where did we put them? There we go, they're at the back. Steve made these up. The one that's vinyl, we don't have to use at all. This is the one he used right here. So what I'm going to do is take this. I don't want to take the one he's exactly using. Let's take the top one. And I don't need to make it a fancy thing either, because what I'm looking for is it's the adhesive that goes between the decal and the part that seems to be cloudy. It's not the clear. This is clear paper. You can look right through it like glass. It's that glue that there. Let's call it glue for lack of a better word. Adhesive, fixative, whatever. But we've got plenty of things to test here, and I thought this is, if there is ever was good information worth sharing. This is right from the sheet, the exact same sheet. So I'll let that sit in water for a few minutes, and we'll see what that looks like. So here's one right from the sheet. I want to lay that right onto the glass. Just the normal way you would do it. There's nothing tricky, nothing special, nothing different. What I usually do, not everybody does. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. John Pothia said a good trick is to roll the Q-tip so you don't tear it. That certainly is if you have a tendency to tear the decals, that would be a good choice. Now reverse the other side. And what I'm looking for is that the reason that the decal did not come out clear. That baffles me. And the thing that always happens with everything in life, I don't care what it is, when you're a rookie to something, you're the new kid on the block, and you don't have a background in fixing problems and solving problems. You do have some success. You take a spray can and you spray paint your bicycle and you say, oh, I'm a painter. But then later in life you say, I got my $20,000 motorcycle I want to paint. Maybe I don't want to use spray cans. Maybe I want to do this a little more efficiently. Now I'm doing this. I'm not changing or doing anything crazy here that I wouldn't normally do. I'll take a dry, even this, and blot it. Now, nothing that I've done is any different than than Steve did. Actually, we have it on video. Okay, so we'll just let that dry. Now, I had a cup of coffee. I let that thoroughly dry, and to me, it still looks it looks exactly the same as what happened to Steve's bike. It's got an opaque, not really clear. It looks foggy. So that's the first part of our test. So I'll repeat the same test over and over. This is one from Inkjet. Just on the back it says Inkjet white paper. And I'll put that next to Steve's. And I left plenty of a border so we can see if this is going to be just as foggy maybe it's the same. But because this is not clear paper, you really can't tell. And I looked on the back, it doesn't look any different than this. So I guess we're going to find a decal that's on clear paper from our stash. Boy, that is, and something that's mystifying to me. Yeah, same thing. Now, this one says inkjet clear. Doesn't tell you who made it. Water slide inkjet clear. No name who made that decal paper. Let's see if that one comes out any different. Again, every one of these is different, and in some way different. And what John has, well, I haven't gotten it yet. I'm waiting for the decal paper, of course, and we're in no rush. And boy, the one thing you never want to do when you get to something like this is rush through it and try to save a couple of days or a week or something. You always will have a problem with that. But anyway, this is a real old one. This is one from when we did the green restoration. But to be honest, I can see already this is going to be a different animal. Let's see if we can figure it out. And if we can't, we're no worse off than if we couldn't figure it out. And I have plenty of decal. That's why John always suggests if you think you need 5 decals, print 10 or 15 while you have it in a printer, because you'll have spares, number one, if you have to do a repair or you stick the bike in a ditch or something. But it's always, the edges are curling up on this. Now, the answer when the edges curl up in the past, what I've done, Steve's paper didn't curl up as much as this one. And this is the microsol. We used this on a previous video. This seemed to let everything get soft. You know, and when you do your own test, you don't have to go out on the internet. You know how people tell you, oh, I found that out on the internet. Yeah. Well, a lot of stuff, believe me, and I've learned a lot. But boy, you never know when the person you're communicating with maybe doesn't know as much as you and never put a decal on in his life, or even worse, they're just having fun making you crazy. Maybe I'm going to make you crazy. I never thought of it. Maybe we could do that. Anyway, once I'm happy, because this is a, you know, it's a rainy afternoon. I'm looking, you know, I'm before those decals get here, I want to know what the hell I'm doing, and I want to practice. Well, today's practice day. The Super Bowl of decals is coming up, and I don't want to be on a losing team. I don't want Steve to be on a losing team. Anyway, we will learn something. I did in an attempt to get this to lay down. I even used a Bondo squeegee because the edges want it to constantly curl up. So what I'm trying to do is squeegee some of the glue out from the, and go very slow from the middle of the decal out to the edge. Because what it does, it puts a little bit of the, whatever we're going to call it, glue or fixative. This is not something that I was anticipating either, because in the past we haven't had anything like this. It seems like, well, just like fish eyes. It's the mystery of the fish eyes. And it takes a while to solve it, but we seem pretty good about it. In the end, we always solve it. It's just, boy, is it a bumpy road sometime getting there. Okay, so that looks like, I mean, my opinion, as I look at this from every angle, this is twice as clear in every way that it can be clear. The edge doesn't want to sit down here for some reason, and then in the worst of all worlds, you could bury that and clear it and just sand it. That wouldn't be a deal breaker. That one laid down pretty good. Now, as you look at that between the letters and everything, that looks pretty clear. And this one, I can still see that. So, again, we learned something. We're trying to share what we learned. When I get the decals from John, I'll do more testing before I actually put them on the bike. So I hope you enjoyed all our experiments, all our tests here on a rainy day. I think we learned something. And of course, the most important thing, I think we're able to pass some of that information on. So again, thanks for watching.